Hi everybody, welcome to Coding Beta. So in my last video, I upgraded my development environment from Laravel 6.x to Laravel 7.x. Right now I'm on Laravel 7.1. So now that I've got kind of the latest and greatest version of Laravel, I thought I'd have a look around and see what some of the new features were that they've offered. And the one that caught my eye was Fluent Strings. So fluent is a word that Laravel uses to describe objects that have functions that return their parent object. So what that allows you to do is once you instantiate an object, you can kind of chain together multiple function calls one after the other. And it just provides a nice clean way to kind of step through logic and make some nice readable code. It's the way Laravel's query builder works and probably some other things. So they've added that functionality to their string helpers. So let's jump in and have a look and see what that looks like. So here I'm in my routes file and I've got this Fluent Strings where right now I'm just kind of defining a string and then passing that along to the template. So let's just go ahead and create a string here. Just anything random, doesn't really matter what it is. Let's do, just it can be anything. But so now that we've got our string and we can start thinking about, okay, let's look at if we want to do some string manipulation. Let's say let's do words. So let's say we only want to do the first couple words in the string. Now the old way of doing that, we have our string and then we can do words. So we need to pass in the string that we're using and then let's say 2 words. So that's going to return a string, so I'm just going to override that variable. So now we have the string and that's being passed in. So now if we go back over and look at the view here, we see the result and we're just getting those 2 words. If we change that to 3 and we go back, now we can see the 3 words there. And so that works fine. We've got that helper for just kind of the basic things we need to do. But now that we've got this string here, we can start thinking about, okay, what if we now also want to let's say title case. We want to have it title cased. So what I would do previously is I would copy this line, and now rather than calling the words, I would call title on it. Once again, I'm passing in that string. And so again, it's another line of code where I have to kind of override that string variable or create a new variable and kind of one by one go through. Now that we've got that, we can look, and these are title cased. So that works. It's the one way of doing it, but it's not as readable as it could be. So what Laravel's added in Laravel 7 is back here, this string words. Instead, what we can do is we can use the new of function, and we're just passing in the string. And what this is doing is it's returning a new object that allows you to chain all of these kind of string helpers together. So I can do string of string, and then I can do words 3. And let's kill that, and we'll go back. So now we're back to where we were. We have the full list there. But now that we've got this Fluent interface, we can add another function, and now I can call in the title. So now I've got the title text, and let's continue down this path. Let's say we want to prepend it. So we're going to prepend it, and we'll say title. And there we go. So you can see it's just a nice kind of clean way where we can go through, step through our logic and get everything that we need done. So one caveat or one thing to just kind of pay attention to when you're looking through these various functions that can be chained together is that not all of them not all of them are chainable. So some of them will return a Boolean or they'll return an array, and at that point you can no longer continue adding on functions after functions. So I actually kind of compiled a list here. Let me uncomment this, and we've got, okay, so here's all of the Fluent String helpers that are available, and I've kind of broken them down into the ones that are chainable and the ones that are non-chainable. So these non-chainable ones return, like I said, usually a Boolean or an integer or something like that, where it kind of stops the chainability. So let's look at an example of that. Let's look at, say, this length one. So let's go back. Let's get back to our string here, and we'll just do string of string. So we're not doing anything special. If we go back and look, we've got our totally random, any string we got there, but we're seeing the full string. And now let's start chaining methods, but let's say the first one we want to do is length. So now it's going to return 28 because the string is 28 characters long. Now, if after that I wanted to say title case it, now we're going to get this error, of course, because call to a member function title on int, because length is returning an integer, we can no longer chain string functions onto it. Now, if I were to reverse the order of these, now things are going to work because, again, we called the title first. Of course, it's not changing the result of this length function, but it just kind of shows you that you can chain things together to a certain extent, but then once you hit that length, that's going to be the end of it. And once you hit any of these non-chainable actions, it's going to be the end of it. I also kind of made a point to this special case here. This WinEmpty helper function is a pretty interesting one, where what that'll let you do is call a function, a closure, that only runs when the string is empty. So I can do WinEmpty, and then I can call a function where I pass in the string, and here I can return whatever logic I want. So if I do return string, and we're going to prepend test. So I guess let's say to start with, you're not going to see anything special here because the string is not empty. So this is never being called. If we go ahead and pass in an empty string, now we're getting test because it is empty, so now it's returning this string prepend test. Now, because I'm returning one of these string helper functions, I could then go on to, let's make this lowercase. So we've got lowercase test, and then I can say upper. And that's going to work fine, and now we're getting the uppercase. But because this is just a closure that runs, we can really return whatever we want in here. So if we wanted to return false, now we're going to get that false value, which is nothing. And then, as you can imagine, if we want to call upper on that false, now we're going to get the error again. We can't call upper on a Boolean. So when you're looking at what is or isn't chainable, this WinEmpty one is kind of an interesting special case where it really depends on what you're doing with that closure, what you're doing with that functionality. So yeah, that's the basics of the new Fluent String helpers. I do have one more code block here that I'm going to uncomment, and that's basically just to show that a lot of the string helpers, like the title case and uppercase, things like that, have been available as helpers in older versions of Laravel. Now they're just able to be chained together. But there is this list here of new string helpers that are only available using the Fluent String helpers. And I was kind of surprised, actually, that some of these haven't been around for longer. These append, you can append a string to the end, or prepend. Those can be pretty useful. If you have a string, you can then explode it. So that's a common way if you have kind of a comma-separated string to return it to an array. That's one that is over here in this non-chainable list because it's going to give you an array. and not a string back, but you can replace parts of the string using regular expressions. You can trim the string. That's another one that I think would be pretty common if you have user input and you don't know if they've got spaces or tabs at the end of it, and you want to kind of trim all that white space off. So yeah, there's a lot of pretty useful stuff that they've added. So yeah, I encourage you, if you've upgraded to Laravel 7, have a look at the documentation for these Fluent String helpers, and it'll probably be a nice way to kind of clean up your code. So that's it for today. We'll see you next time.